This is the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
Hello once again, this is the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, and we are going to continue on with our Team Spotlight series here, and we're going to take a closer look at the AFC South. That's right, we are going to be talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts, and those Houston Texans. And we're going to kick things off with those Jacksonville Jaguars coming off a 9-8 season last season, in which they scored 404 points and surrendered just 350. When you look at this Jaguars team from top to bottom, there is a lot of talent here that we're working with. In fact, if you look at the depth chart, you've got Trevor Lawrence there, quarterback. Running back, you got Travis Etienne there, and Tank Bigsby, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. You got Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones. They got themselves Jamal Agnew, who was huge for them at points last season. Parker Washington and Tim Jones, and at tight end, Evan Engram and the recently drafted Brenton Strange. They've also got a pretty solid offensive line there, highlighted by Walker Little there, Brandon Sheriff there, and Cam Robinson, who's dealing with suspension. So you're going to see a lot of Anton Harrison early on in the season. You know what? The rookie out of Oklahoma. On defense, their defensive line is solid with Fakasi there, Hamilton, Robertson Harris, and Josh Allen there at the weak side linebacker to go along with Devin Lloyd, Olakute, and Trayvon Walker to kind of round out that linebacking core. And in that back end, you got Tyson Campbell there, Rayshawn Jenkins, Andre Sisco, and Darius Williams. So when you look at this offense and the defense for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're actually in really good shape right now. And I really like how this team is looking. Now, when we go back to the 2022 season, the Jaguars, they made it in the playoffs for the first time since 2017, where they lost to the Patriots in that conference championship. All of which was possible thanks to a 5-game winning streak there to close out the regular season there to push the record to above 500. It also helps when you defeat the team that you're trying to catch twice during that winning streak. Jacksonville, they handled their business inside the division, inside the conference. More, we want to talk about it there. Going 8-4 in the conference, outscoring their opponents, like I said, 404 to 350, which was the fourth best points differential in the AFC. Jacksonville gave way to the Chiefs. They gave them all that they could handle in that divisional round there. So I have a feeling this isn't the last that we're going to see the Jaguars when it comes to the playoffs. Why do I feel that way? When I look at how the schedule sets up for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I really like how it sets up. I really like the talent on this team. And because of this division being weak, I think there's a chance the Jaguars end up at 12-5, which is going to be one of the better records in the AFC. Now, a camp battle that I am very intrigued in. It's catching Twitter. It's all the rage of Twitter right now. It's the whole Travis Etienne versus Tank Bigsby right now. And what that usage is going to look like all throughout this camp. Is Bigsby just your typical handcuff, big time? I'm going to get this guy, draft him on my lineup because if Etienne goes down, Bigsby's the next man to step up. Or is this going to be a 1A, 1B type situation? Because when I look at how Jacksonville is going to run this team, they're going to be a very pass-heavy organization here. Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Evan Engram. Christian Kirk. You got Trevor Lawrence, who's one of the ascending talents in the National Football League. That doesn't really leave a whole lot of passes to Travis Etienne, who wasn't really catching a whole lot of passes to begin with last season. And his efficiency, especially down the goal line, it simply wasn't there. Enter Tank Bigsby. If you can build a back when it comes to the running back position, Tank Bigsby is basically how you would construct a running back based on his size and his weight. 5'10", 210 pounds. That is like the ideal size for a running back in today's game. It also helps that Bigsby is a very talented runner. Unfortunately, at Auburn was a very untalented team, and he kind of struggled there at times. And however you want to look at it, I think they really diminished his value when it came to the draft. Now, speaking of that draft, how do the Jaguars make out? Well, at 127, they went out themselves and they addressed that offensive line position, especially that tackle position, knowing that Cam Robinson's probably going to be suspended for a significant amount of time there. They went out there and they got themselves probably their future left tackle in Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. At 261 there in the second round, Brenton Strange kind of looking at that tight end of the future. Maybe they want to run 2 tight end sets. With Doug Peterson, who knows what he wants to run? We know he wants to run running back by committee type approaches, and we know he's not afraid of using multiple tight ends. That's just who he happens to be. In the third round there, pick number 88 was Tank Bigsby. And then at 421, the fourth round, pick 121, Ventrell Miller was selected to kind of work with that linebacking core. We talked about those linebackers for the Jaguars, whether that's Josh Allen, Devin Lloyd, Fossa there, Olakute, and Trayvon Walker. But if you look at that next man up type mentality, Deshaun Dixon there, Chad Mumba, Ventrell Miller, and Chase on that's who it is. A Chase on there, who was a huge selection there from LSU. This Jaguars team, the backups are perfect fits for who the starters are. So if someone goes down in that first four linebackers, they're going to be able to slide someone in there pretty seamlessly. Now, to round out the rest of the draft class, they attack the defensive line there in rounds 4 and 5 by grabbing defensive lineman Tyler Lacey and then coming back with Yasir Abdullah there out of Louisville. Then in round number 5, a little bit later, pick 150, they won Antonio Johnson. And then in round 6, they went with Penn State wide receiver Parker Washington, who is basically a running back that plays the slot position. So, I mean, they've got all kinds of options when it comes to this offense. They did very well in the draft. Now, some key additions and losses. They went on and made the trade for Calvin Ridley there. So that's automatically going to be a huge addition for this team. They also signed Ernest Johnson in the offseason there, as well as offensive tackle Josh Wells. Now, looking at some of the losses that they suffered, edge rusher Arden Key, he's no longer there, and offensive tackle Jawan Taylor, that's a big loss on that offensive line. So we kind of look at why they went out there and signed Josh Wells, why they drafted Anton Harrison. That's a partial reason why. And they've also lost Marvin Jones, who's heading back to Detroit, which is probably a good thing considering that Calvin Ridley's now there. Now, when you look at the best move in their offseason, it is hands down the acquisition of Calvin Ridley. He is a good, dare I say, bet to help improve his passing offense, which was already good. It was the 10th best offense last season as far as passing is concerned on a per-game basis. Now, the worst move for the Jaguars, it was the loss of Jawan Taylor. Walker Little, he's going to be on that right side. We talked about Anton Harrison being there on the left. Cam Robinson is going to be serving a bit of a suspension for violating the league's performance-enhancing drug policy. They really could use Jawan Taylor, but I don't think they would have been able to afford him. So they went out there via the draft, via free agency to kind of hopefully solidify that position a little bit, protect Trevor Lawrence at all costs. Now, what needs to happen for the Jaguars to be successful in 2023? It's all about taking care of business in your own backyard. That's taking care of business within the division, which shouldn't be a problem when you look at the Titans, the Texans, and the Colts. We know that this division is going to be good. It's just not there yet. Very young quarterback play. Will Levis there is going to step up at some point for the Tennessee Titans. We know that CJ Stroud there, he's going to be in Houston Texan day 1, week 1 type starter there. We also know that Anthony Richardson is the quarterback of the future for the Indianapolis Colts. So we know that this AFC South, it is in good hands, at least as far as the quarterback position is concerned, for quite a long period of time. So again, take care of business in the division right now. Take care of business inside your conference, which they have some big time contests there against some big time teams. If they can do all that, they're going to be fine. All right, so let's talk fantasy now. We talked about last season, but let's talk about fantasy because that's what you're tuning in for. Here are your top 5 fantasy assets for the Jacksonville Jaguars for 2023. That starts at the quarterback position there with Trevor Lawrence, who finished 2022 with 4,113 passing yards, which was the 9th most in the National Football League, averaging 7 yards per attempt. Add Calvin Ridley to Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Engram, and there is no shortage of offensive weapons on this Jaguars team. At number 2, okay, I'll say it's Travis Etienne. Though I have my reservations on how this is going to go back and forth, he is still one of the most explosive backs in this league. His 16 runs of greater than 15 yards, that was the 6th best among the position last season. So just give the man the ball and let's see what he can do with it. At number 3, how about Christian Kirk? Jacksonville invested wisely in Kirk coming over from Arizona, having his first 1,000-yard season of his career. He ranked 14th in yards, 13th in touchdowns, and when he was targeted, he had a 104.7 passer rating. When you get all that going for you, you're going to produce. At number 4, Calvin Ridley. Hey, I don't care how long you've been out of the league. We know that this guy can ball. One thing Ridley's always been able to do is create separation, and that is not something you just forget all of a sudden. Ridley hasn't even played in over a year, and Devontae Adams has already come out and said that he's one of the top 5 receivers in the game today. At number 5, how about Evan Engram? Let's not forget how Engram closed out the 2022 season there as the top option in this Jaguars passing game, leading the way, averaging 66.8 yards per contest and 15.8 fantasy points per game. That all being said, the top fantasy play on this Jaguars team is none other than Trevor Lawrence. Welcome to the big boys club, Trevor Lawrence. That's right. You're going to be mentioned in the same breath as Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. You are going to be right there when it's all said and done. Lawrence has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback because his Jaguars team has the potential to be a top 5 scoring offense next season. after being the 9th best team when it came to scoring last season, averaging 23.9 points per game. Now, if you're looking for a sleeper as far as fantasy is concerned, look no further than Tank Bigsby. We talked about what this competition could look like coming out of camp. We're hearing Twitter do their thing right now and the social media, all the buzz about this. I'm not sold on Etienne being an every down back, and I'm not alone out there. I don't see him being a goal line back, and again, I'm not alone on this theory either. I do see Bigsby carving out a larger role in this offense than many people are assuming right now, what they're expecting. Bigsby, I mentioned, is the type of runner who's going to run you over. He's going to run around you. He can do whatever you could possibly think of a running back. When you look at what a running back needs to check as far as boxes are concerned, he has the vision, he has the burst, and he does a great job setting up his blocks to create the extra yards. Unfortunately, I mentioned that Auburn was a bad team last season, so we didn't necessarily see that translate on the game film if you're pulling up Auburn Tigers 2022. Now, the best value in fantasy, it belongs to Evan Engram, who, again, we are just dismissing as this maybe being an outlier type season because he actually caught passes. His history with the New York Giants is he couldn't catch a ball to save his life. Well, last season, he was tight end 5 in PPR scoring, and yet he is going later than the tight end 8 right now. Can Engram hold off guys like Darren Waller, Pat Freiermuth, Dallas Goedert? Well, I mean, I can understand why some people may make that argument that Evan Engram is behind those guys. But when it's all said and done, he's still one of the most talented pass catchers, and he has a skill set to be that guy. We saw that last season. Now, the player that you need to get on this team, and I'm going to say it's going to be one of these Jaguars wide receivers, whether it's Christian Kirk or whether it's Calvin Ridley, whichever wide receiver has the lower price tag there when it comes to your fantasy drafts. Right now, Christian Kirk is going below Calvin Ridley on ADP. Now, the Jaguars receivers, they have the 3rd most favorable schedule as far as fantasy is concerned during the fantasy playoffs, and that is something that is worth noting. So to make a long story short, trust the Jacksonville Jaguars in fantasy. It's going to pay off. They're going to have a huge season, and the AFC South is theirs for the taking.